We are about to start. Thank you. I'm about to start. Off we go. Thank you for attending today's Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee meeting, dated Wednesday, 25th of January, 2023, in the Council chambers. And we start with apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from Councillors Rise, Alloway and Chapman. Councillor Tapper is substituting for Councillor Rise and Councillor Tedder is substituting for Councillor Alloway. We've also had apologies from executive portfolio holders, Councillor Jennings-Evans and Councillor Garrett.
Just to add to that, we did write, as requested by the committee, the chair wrote to every single committee exec member who need to be here to be attending. So that's what the last two excuses was for. So, previous minutes. Questions? There are 3 minutes to be signed off today. One is dated the 9th of November, 2022. I need someone to propose and someone to second. Graham Tapper proposing. Councillor Black is seconding. And the next one is minutes dated 24th of November 2022. And it's any questions on it? No amendments, nothing. Anyone want someone to propose? Councillor Hawkins. Second, Councillor Galliford. Thank you. The third one. Committee meeting on the 5th of January 2023. Any questions? Amendments? Councillor Whitcroft. Sorry, you're proposing, are you? Oh, beg your pardon. I said, okay, I misunderstood your signal there. Anyone to propose? Councillor Whitcroft and seconding? Councillor Tapper. All done. I'll sign it later, Catherine. Thank you. Right. Just as a preamble to this meeting today, I mean, as most of you would have seen, the agenda is long and the papers are very, very thick, to say the least. So I want all of you, I ask of you, or request of you, that keep your questions short. Don't try not to make a statement. Try your best not to make a statement if you are tempted to as well. So hopefully we'll finish on time. That was my speech for the day.
Chairman, can we does that apply to everybody about statements?
That applies to me as well. Just before Councillor Hawkins and Councillor Deach get onto their usual horse and run around the stables, yes, that applies to me as well. Councillor White.
Just going back to the minutes for the 24th of November, I think I chaired that meeting, so you won't be able to sign the minutes.
No, you need to sign them.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay, moving on, agenda item 4, Environment and Health Portfolio. Sorry, declarations of interest. My apologies. Declarations of interest? None whatsoever. Excellent. Agenda item 4, Environment and Health Portfolio. I presume this is being presented by Councillor Dugan. Go ahead, Councillor Dugan.
Okay, I'll give a very short sort of verbal update. You've got the papers, obviously, and happy to answer questions. So happy Burns Night, everybody. So I'm going to do this entire piece with a Scottish accent because it's Burns Night. Thank you. I've practiced it for many years. Okay, so this is my first year as the portfolio holder for environmental and health. wasn't quite sure what I was letting myself in for, in truth, and it's turned out to be a very fascinating portfolio. By far the biggest element, as you might imagine, is the waste contract, and I actually chair despite the fact it's my first year, I chair the Joint Waste Members Committee with all four councils part of that, and I also represent our council on the Surrey Environmental Partnership Committee. Our waste collection service in Surrey is excellent. We outperform the other four councils. In fact, we've outperformed the other four councils. I went down there with Mr. Stevens just before Christmas to sort of say thank you to the staff. And the depot manager, Michelle, I asked her, you know, what do you blow your trumpet about? And we have outperformed on a monthly and quarterly basis the other councils every single quarter since we have been part of the contract, which I think is an excellent service that our residents receive. And the service mostly runs excellently. I mean, obviously, you know, we've got processes in place for missed bins and all the rest of it. And I think that works very well too. You'll be aware that we had a strike earlier this year. And I want to mention that really also as a positive thing, not necessarily in the way that it was dealt with. We didn't deal with it. That was dealt with by Amy, the Amy staff, not ours. But I think that the leadership within Joint Waste and within the depot itself and the Amy team and the team cohesion became very evident, because despite the fact clearly you have two sides in a strike, you've got those that are on strike and those that are not. When the strike was over, and thankfully it was a relatively short period of time, the team pretty much immediately reintegrated as if they'd never been on two separate sides, and I think that's testament to the teamliness that exists down there. Also, another little point, our staff behaved immaculately on the picket line. Again, it's an area, you know, as with any picket line, there's all sorts of chance of some difficulties. And there were difficulties on the picket line, to be really clear. There were a number of arrests, people were blocking the road. What's interesting, none of the people that were arrested were members of Amy's staff. They were all GMB union officials who come along and, to be fair, I suspect that is their role, and it enables the staff to. But I think it's it's worth noting that it was even in that sort of conflict situation, the whole team behaved, I think, extremely well, and as I say, reintegrated very well. The curbside collection, clearly the biggest part of the contract, but not in my mailbox. I have more pictures of full bins and more importantly, full dog poo bins on one phone than really should be on any phone anywhere. And we've discussed that previously, and I don't go into, and it's still not perfect. Even the Amy part is not perfect, and you're aware that there are 4 different agencies in the borough that own those bins, and it's, you know, it depends whose bin it is as to who needs to be chased to fix it. But I think we've done a good job at mapping it. The next thing we're doing, not just for the poo bins, but for the just street bins as well, is we're hoping next year, and it's sort of work in progress, is to have QR codes on the bin. So that if the bin is full, you just take a picture of the QR code, it'll take you directly to the site and you can report the fact that it needs to be emptied. There's some background work that needs to be done, and I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but Amy need to recognise each of the bins separately, rather than saying it's a bin on the Frimley Road. Frimley Road is a very, very long road, and there are multiple bins on it. By example, Park Street, you know, which bin on Park Street? And then, so there's a bit of background work that needs to be done, but I think if we can do that, it'll become much, much easier to report. And I think, you know, again, the service to pick up when the bin is full, the service to go around and empty them is, again, I think, run very efficiently by the street team. Right. Climate change, we've just employed a new officer, Cameron Dent. I met with him actually earlier this month. He'll be bringing the energy strategy statement to the climate change working group, I think, next week. And there's some really positive projects within that strategy. I kind of look at these things and just think, you know, it's going to cost us an awful lot of money to become green. Some of the projects probably the most beneficial projects to us are looking at putting photovoltaic cells on roofs of the buildings that we own, because they're hugely positive for the green agenda, but actually, because of the scale at which we'll deploy these things, because of the size of the buildings, they become economically attractive much more quickly than you might imagine if you're putting them on your own house. I think we're looking at sort of somewhere between 5 and 8 years, and we'll then, in effect, have free, in inverted commas, electricity. The paper also mentions the fact that we've restructured and strengthened the corporate enforcement team, and I think that's a positive thing. We've been relying, I think, too heavily on agency staff up until then, which obviously has a cost. So we've now recruited all of those posts. And finally, before I open up for questions, I just wanted to mention environmental health. Again, and I say this as someone who's sort of run this portfolio for 9 months, a bit of an unsung hero. I've always thought they sort of went round and handed out stickers with 5 stars in it to all of our restaurants, but there's a significant and really important underlying role that leads to those stickers being put out. And again, it's something you don't really think about, but food outlets have a real opportunity to cause very serious harm to our residents if they get it wrong. And there's a well-documented case late last year in one of our restaurants where they did get it wrong, and 15 residents, I think it was, ended up in hospital. So they do carry out a really good role. I think it was, ended up in hospital. So they do carry out a really good role, and it's, you know, and I just wanted to mention them because it is a significant task that they carry out on behalf of the council, but also on behalf of our residents. That's all I have as a preamble. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Dubin.
Thanks for that. I should declare a retrospective non-pecuniary interest in that I have a role at Surrey County Council to do with the environment, and I do get invited to the meetings that Colin was talking about in terms of the environmental partnership, waste partnership and so on. I won't ask any questions about that because I think that there'll be plenty of other people who will want to talk about that. I just want to talk about a particular interest of mine that everybody knows about, and that's cycling when it comes to your environment role. And the Edward Falling is already nodding off. But yeah, there was a meeting just the other night about LSWIPs, the local cycling walking infrastructure plans. I probably got that the wrong way around. And it occurred to me at that meeting that there would be some opportunities for this council, particularly when it comes to cycle racks and secure cycle storage. I've mentioned this at other meetings before, and I just wanted you as the portfolio holder, Colin, and a fellow cyclist to perhaps just stay on top of that, because I think there are going to be some great opportunities, and I'll make sure I make representations to the Environment Working Group. But yeah, I just thought I would mention that. But thank you very much, and great presentation, and well done to all the officers on the work on the environment. I know they're all over it, which is great. And actually, we got a comment the other day, funnily enough, without massaging our chief executive's ego, but we got a very good comment from County Hall about how engaged you are in the environmental aspects of this council, which is really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, at last. Thank you, Councillor Deach.
I can
Councillor Dubin.
make a very quick response because it wasn't really a question, and that's fine, but I'm going to reiterate the point that I made before the meeting started. If you could improve the cycle path between my house and Farnborough train station, I would appreciate it, and that's very much in your bailiwick, not mine. But I'll sit on top of, well, not physically sit on top of cycle racks, but
Councillor Tapper.
On page 18, paragraph 3.1, corporate enforcement, amongst the various listed offences is dog fouling. But if you turn to the following page, number of cases raised in 2022, there doesn't appear to have been a single dog fouling case that has been pursued by corporate enforcement. Is that really the case? I mean, dog fouling appears to be a huge problem all across the borough. And I am aware that when we report them on the website, it is specifically, it says dog fouling observed. We do have people within our communities that have observed and reported, and I'm just wondering why we have no counts of cases as a consequence. Could you follow that up, please, and find out whether that really is the case, that we've never pursued a dog fouling issue
thank you,
for an
Councillor
entire year?
Tapper. Appreciate your help on that.
I will follow up and have an answer. I suspect it's a very, very difficult thing, but in truth, to follow up on. Because unless you catch the dog doing it and the owner not picking it up, you're a bit stuck.
I think I'm more concerned about the owner than the dog.
I will ask the question.
Councillor Wheeler. Sorry, Councillor Wheeler, then it's, if there's no more questions on the floor, I'll go to Councillor Hawkins, and after that I will go to Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chair. Rather unusually, mine is on a similar vein to Councillor Tapper, which is I can see that we've done one successful prosecution, but I just wondered how many times I believe it's a portable camera, can be deployed to areas at high risk of fly tipping. So how many times have we actually deployed it? And I'm hoping that there are other cases in the wings rather than just one case taken, one case won, because we are, as you know, very liable to fly tipping. And as you probably are aware, living in a slightly more rural ward, we have a number of fly tipping cases that are reported. The other thing as well that I just think we do need to formally record and we need to look at again, now that we have a full capacity of enforcement staff, is the amount of time that it takes from initial reporting to enforcement documentation being delivered. So far, we have an awful lot of cases that have been open for a very long time. Some of those, as no doubt you're aware, is a result of the fact that they go to planning appeal and there is a delay in planning appeals being heard, but there's an awful lot of cases that we've just not moved forward on. Chair, if you are minded to approve that, I think it would be really useful to have this particular portfolio come back again slightly more quickly than in a year's time, because we need to see some very definite movement and improvement in this area.
I'm happy to add that in. Does anyone object to it? No? Great, thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. A comment touching on... Sorry?
Sorry, Councillor, do you have any objections to that, Councillor Dugan? Or is there a question attached as well?
Yeah, so on the fly tipping, I mean, the cameras have been deployed for a period of time. It's not like they go out for, and they are put at areas where we think there is a high risk of fly tipping happening. The problem is, as you, I'm sure, are well aware, and if anyone's actually seen them, is that you've got to put signage up saying that you've got a CCTV camera there and that you are filming. I don't know how many cases we have discovered as a result of the cameras, but I can find out and come back to you.
If I could come back then, let's look at it positively. Have we seen a reduction in the number of fly tipping cases within the borough? as a result of the deployment of these cameras. Because actually, if having the signs up and saying we're filming you is stopping people from dumping it in the first place, that's definitely a win, because we haven't got the cost of prosecution and we haven't got the cost of clear up. It would just be nice to have, I think, some more indicative numbers to see the success.
I'm not sure that we've got that data yet, but the man that might know is sitting 3 to my right.
Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. So the deployable CCTV that we are currently using is new equipment. It's being trialled in a single location at the moment. We have effectively cloud-based access to the footage, so we can reel back, watch it, and we can watch it in real time as well. As far as I am aware, and I will get confirmation of this, we have not identified any fly tipping in that location as a consequence of the cameras being there. So, in answer to your question, there's a direct correlation between the signs in the camera and a reduction in fly tipping in that particular location.
Maybe what we...
Can you keep it short, please?
It will be very short. Maybe in that case, we should consider offsetting the cost of those cameras against the cost of clearing up the fly tipping, because I can think of a couple of locations where if we were to deploy them, we might not have to come out anymore. Thank you.
That, Mr. Stevens?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. There's a very long and protracted answer to that around
No.
displacement, which we'll get into in another
Thank
slide.
you. Thank you very much. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, on climate change, and it's not because I have the Chairman sitting on my left-hand side, Surrey Heath Borough Council is held up as an exemplar council by the rest of Surrey on the work we're doing and how far ahead of the curve we are. So well done to the team. Thank you.
I can only endorse that. Well done, Councillor Galliford. Councillor Page?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a question. Has the council looked at what 3 words as a way of trying to find out where our assets are and record them? Because I note the comments by Councillor Dugan about where the bins were in Frimley Road. If we could assign them a QR code with the what 3 words location, that will get you down to within about a metre, I think. So that's my question. Have we looked at that technology?
The answer, unfortunately, is I don't know. It will come down to, so we use an app called Whitespace, which is the app that the AMI crews and vehicles have. And it's whether or not Whitespace is capable of, I guess, working alongside what 3 words. You would like to think that if it isn't, they'd be working towards it, because it does seem to be the most precise mapping tool, you know, that's available on the entire planet. So, but I don't know that I don't have a definite answer, which is a bit annoying because someone asked me it earlier and I didn't chase for an answer. But I will, and I'll let you know.
The CEO wants to say a few words on this particular matter. Thank you.
And only an observation, if I may. So what 3 words is a absolutely fantastic facility for identifying particularly locations that are not adjacent to properties, so that you couldn't look up by looking up an address or a postcode. So usually trying to locate a car on a motorway is really useful, and trying to locate an asset or somebody in a large area of open space. I think the great thing about bins is that they are associated with a property. They're associated with an address, a number, and a road name and a postcode. And so the key thing is to associate the QR code with an address, because that bin could end up anywhere. It could be blown down the road. And the QR code, I hope, will enable those bins to be associated back with the property. And because we have the address of the property, the need for what 3 words isn't, the added value of what 3 words isn't there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Okay, I have got only one question. Well, sorry. Is it a quick one, Councillor Wheeler?
It is a quick one, yeah. I'm really pleased to see that we are doing healthy wellbeing events in Camberley. Great for Camberley. Is there any chance of extending those to other areas within the borough, which, as per normal, seem to be completely and utterly obliterated and forgotten? Thank you.
Yes.
I have suggestions. Please, could somebody liaise with me, because I think we could do it and join it up with the Warm Hub initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Okay, I've got one question. Sorry.
Chairman, can I continue?
Sorry, Councillor Page. Is that a legacy hand or a new question?
No, it's a new hand responding to what Mr. Roberts said. And I think that my comment about what 3 words were more towards dog poo bins and the bins that we have, rubbish bins that we have out in the estate. So they might not be connected to an address in that way. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate that. I've got one question for Councillor Dugan, and most likely it's associated with the finance portfolio as well. Having looked at the environment and health side, the climate change side, quite a few of them actually says initial feasibility study, so on and so forth. I mean, there's costs attached to it. And has this been taken into the MTF, which is a medium-term financial forecast, or in the current or the future budgets?
No, is quite simply the answer, because the business cases haven't been put together yet. Will they be? Yes. Do we recognise that they're there? Yes. Are they going to be expensive? In some cases, absolutely yes. Equally, I would like to think that some of them we might be able to pay for out of reserves, because there'll be capital projects. But until we go through the process of looking at each individual site, coming up with a business case and deciding, you know, again, we're going to prioritise those business cases, bring them for you, which is going to have the best green outcome, which is going to have the best financial outcome, etc., etc. No, we don't have them in the medium-term financial plan.
Thank you, Councillor Dugan. Okay, sorry, one more question there, Councillor White.
On page 22, 5.2, an out-of-hours noise complaint response service operates between Thursday and Monday. Is there any reason why this can't operate 7 days a week?
Councillor Dugan.
Your favourite subject, Chair, cost. I've got one more point I'd like to make, which I should have made when I first.
Absolutely.
And it's almost an advert, but it's something that I hadn't appreciated when we first talked about my favourite subject, dog poo bins. So historically, we used to collect dog poo separately from all the rest of the waste, and it was disposed of in a different way. It isn't anymore. Dog poo is disposed of in exactly the same way as we dispose of the waste from street bins. And thus, there could be a project, has a cost associated, where you would replace dog poo bins with normal bins because they've got a greater capacity. It would perhaps relieve the number of photographs I receive of overflowing dog poo bins. But it's an education point equally as well, oddly enough. And it wasn't just in preparation for this meeting, but I put my first dog poo bin in a street bin this very week. So just obviously neatly tied, rather than hanging on the tree for the dog poo fairy to come round and collect it. But so yeah, in all seriousness, no, there is, you know, residents. In fact, we're putting stickers on street bins now that say you can put dog poo bin into the street bins. So it is a thing, and you social media experts should get it out there.
Councillor Dugan, thank you very much. In fact, I have heard about this before, and it was clarified with me by Mr. Watson in one of our conversations. He actually said we can use a general bin because that's what we do at home. When my kids' dogs come over, we put the dog poo into the general bin. So I do not understand why there's a special bin for it. And nappies, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Tapper.
Yes, I'd just like to point out, in fact, that in most locations where dog bins are set up, and there is no associated litter bin, that dog bin fills up just as much with litter as it does with dog poo. So there is an advantage in both directions. Thank you.
A valid point. Thank you, Councillor Tapper. Right. If there are no more questions, I'm going to move on, which is now agenda item 5. It's Councillor Dugan again, I believe. I've been told it's you, Councillor Dugan.
Well, you were informed incorrectly then, Chair. Look free to my left, my right, Mr. Stevens. I'm going to bid you good night.
Thank you very much for attending, Councillor Dugan.
Don't eat too much haggis.
Well, it's not the haggis, it's the gravy.
Charming conversation. That's what I call charming conversation. Right, Councillor, Mr. Stevens, and it's your report, I believe. No, it's not your report, you're the director, so you're going to handle it whether you like it or not.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite fortuitous that I have two officers that should have dialed in this evening who are quite happy to present. So we have Anne Zhang and James Robinson, who need to turn their cameras on so we can see them. Lovely, thank you very much. And I believe that Anne is going to lead on this report.
Go ahead, Anne.
Thank you. Good evening. So this report updates you on monitored air quality across the borough, mainly based on 2021 results. The report was prepared by Senior Officer James Robinson, who has been managing air quality for Surrey Heath for 20 years. And it is my privilege to highlight some key points here. So first of all, what we monitor and why. Local authorities have statutory duties to review and assess local air quality. And air quality is measured by the concentration of key air pollutants. In England, these are identified as NO2, mainly relating to road traffic emissions, and sometimes PM10. Now, based on assessments of the health effects of each pollutant, UK government has defined national objective concentrations, and the concentrations below these objective levels are not likely to cause significant health impacts. So the Council has been monitoring and reporting local NO2 and PM10 concentrations and benchmarking these against national objectives. In 2021, the Council monitored NO2 using diffusion tubes from 51 locations across the borough, including 17 locations introduced in 2020. Further, 2 sites in Mitchett were introduced last year, so we now have 53 diffusion tube sites altogether. In addition, NO2 and PM10 were monitored at an automatic monitoring station of M3 in Camberley. For NO2, no exceedance above the annual mean or hourly mean were recorded in 2021. And for PM10, no exceedance above statutory objective levels were recorded in the past 5 years at monitoring location. In short, we have met and continue to meet all statutory air quality objectives. Now, questions have been raised whether improved air quality observed in 2020 was partly due to travel restrictions. Surrey County Council's transport team reckons that road traffic had returned to pre-pandemic level in 2021, and our 2021 data is fairly similar to our 2020 data, with a marginal increase in NO2 concentration at diffusion tube sites, but a slight decrease at the automatic monitoring station of M3. Furthermore, provisional data from 2022 indicate monitored NO2 is similar to 2021 level, and that's approximately 20% lower than the 2019 level. Still, we need more data from 2022 and 23 to verify whether this improvement is here to stay. Last but not least, PM2.5. Due to the small size, these particles are more likely to penetrate into lung and the bloodstream and cause health damage. Currently, there is no statutory obligation on councils to monitor these fine particulates. Last month, UK government announced a set of environmental targets under the Environment Act 2021, including 2 long-term targets for PM2.5 to be achieved by 2040. Whilst the responsibility of meeting these targets sits with national government, local authorities are expected to work towards achieving these targets in their area. And the government will issue further interim targets and improvement plan to clarify local authorities' responsibility in this regard. To conclude, this report and the Air Quality Annual Status Report provide an update on the work the Council has taken under local air quality management statutory duties. If you have any observations, James and I will be able to respond to either today or after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions? Councillor Deitch, Councillor Hawkins, in that order for the moment.
Thank you very much. A very clear and concise presentation, which is appreciated. One question I have is around the pollution levels on the A331, which is immediately adjacent to my ward of Mitchett, which I think you mentioned there in your presentation. Now, I understand that some time ago, the now disbanded local area committee arranged for a reduction in speed limit on the A331 as a direct result of air pollution. There was plans to put in average speed cameras on there or some form of enforcement. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible for reasons which we don't need to go into now. But I just wondered if you, as the sort of authority officers, have any idea as to whether those measures were effective or not in that area. And that happened long before COVID, so hopefully you might have some data on that you might be able to share with us. Thank you very much.
Who wants to answer it? Anne, go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
very good question. And well, the project overall has been considered as a success. And James has been working on this project with Rushmore and a few other authorities as well. So we're entering the mobilization stage. I think James might be able to provide more information on that.
Thank you, Anne, and good evening, councillors. I can very quickly. The speed reduction measure has been a success in that it's now recording just under the maximum limit. But unfortunately, the government, whom we have to prove that the measure has been a success, have been a bit remiss in telling us what exactly they require for us to remove the speed level restriction. So we're still waiting their instructions as to what they need to supply. And that's likely to be based on other factors other than monitoring, as in makeup of the type of vehicles on the road, how many are actually travelling on the road, and a certain degree of modelling as well. But in short, in answer to your question, there has been a very small but rather insignificant reduction in nitrogen dioxide levels due to the speed reduction. And if we were to use that purely as a basis for deciding whether to remove the measure, it would be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Quickly, thank you.
Very briefly, it would be appreciated if you could keep us updated on progress with that. Just an email, doesn't have to come back to committee, but yeah, but I would appreciate some updates as and when you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. On the 331, there are those of us who think that that was an act of pure lunacy, and the money would have been better spent monitoring the M3, as that goes through residential areas and the 331 does not. My question, however, just as an aside, my question is one for James, as he knows the history. Really looking at the criteria where the, you know, on page 31, it mentions sort of a distance of the M3. I don't know if there's some further data available, but I think there used to be a monitoring station at the Frimley Park Hospital roundabout and just on the slip road going into the hospital, because the that is an important congestion point, all of that in this area. And I do feel going forward, we ought to have some data over the years, because at some stage, hopefully, potentially, the hospital is going to be redeveloped. And there needs to be dual carriageway, there needs to be a lot of work, a lot of agencies have got to come together. And I would hate it to fall down because there is not adequate data on air monitoring going forward over the years. But the section just at that nib, it is in my patch, but that's by the by. There are a lot of cars queuing up there, not just in the morning, at all sorts of times, and at visiting times. It is a major congestion black spot in the area. Thank you.
Who wants to answer that? There was a question.
Oh, well, I've got the monitoring location maps in front of me. So very quickly, we do have quite a few monitoring locations surrounding Frimley Park Hospital. We've got one right at entrance and another two of A325 Portsmouth Road roundabout, and a further few along M3 and that junction. So, I mean, last year, all monitoring results indicate there's no exceedance, but we do have quite a few data over the years. So if you are interested, we can perhaps compile a list and send the data over. Would that be helpful?
Joan, yes, that would be very kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins, Councillor Tedder, then Councillor Noble, and Councillor Tapper. No, if he's on video, then they come in last. Councillor Tedder.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, the monitoring stations along the M3, could you possibly let me know, or let the committee know, where the monitoring stations are from the Lightwater Junction through to the Long Cross, which takes in Hyams Lane, the school, the cricket club, and the common?
And do you want to answer that quickly?
Yes, and no, it covers quite a large area, and then we do have a few along Lightwater, and then so it is actually part of a plan to, because we do have 51 monitoring locations, but the issue is not everyone know where they are. So the plan for this year.
Could I interrupt you then, just to cut short? Is it possible for you to prepare the entire list and circulate to the committee, so we are all aware as to where these monitoring stations are? That way they can, if they are unhappy about it, they can come to you directly and deal with that matter. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, can do. James has prepared a list, but we also have a map. So it is our plan to make that map publicly available, so everyone can see where their nearest monitoring location. So
okay,
we'll
thank you
that.
very much. Thank you. Councillor Noble, then Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. On page 38 at 1.55, it mentions electric vehicle charging points in council car parks from August 2023. But in Councillor Dugan's report at page 17, T5, it mentions April. Am I missing something? There seems to be a different dates.
Mr. Stevens, you are the director for both.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can take this one. Thank you, Anne. So the discrepancy in dates is down to the dialogue between the climate change officer, the chosen contractor who's undertaking the installation, and obviously our colleagues that are dealing with the air quality annual report. The most recent conversation that we had this week with Connected Curb indicates that they'll start dealing with the DNO and undertaking the substructure works this March.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Chair. My question has been answered now.
Thank you.
Just
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Just very quickly, to follow up on that, there was some debate about the type of charges that we were putting in and the locations, and I wonder if any changes have been made to the original report that was submitted to the executive. I know that within my ward they were putting in what I would say is a slow charger, i.e. an overnight charger in a car park where no one that had invested in an EV would be prepared to leave their cars overnight. So I don't know if there's been any follow-up on that or...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. There has. If you'd like, I can organise a conversation with Cameron, Dent, Eugene Leal and myself, just so we can talk through what the current plan is for the car park you're referring to.
I think it would be a good idea to actually put out a circular to the entire committee so that you can avoid having separate meetings on these. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. When will the 2022 data be available?
So some provisional data is available, but they will be reported in 2023 report. So it's always a year behind. So yeah, the report will be, the annual status report will be submitted to DEFRA in June this year. That will include all our 2022 data.
Is there any reason why we can't have it for a meeting like this instead of waiting for the next council year?
It is because it's a monthly, the diffusion tube, it's a monthly average, and they be sent out to lab for analysis. And it's normally a delay of at least 3 months. So we're talking about a lag at least 3 months behind. So that is why DEFRA consider perhaps June, 6 months is a good time for all the lab across the country to provide all the monitoring report for the year. So yeah, that's
Thank
how
you very
things
much.
stand.
If there are no questions on the floor, I want to get Councillor Page in, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Excellent report. Thank you very much for that. There was a point which Councillor Hawkins picked up on, and I picked up on at the time, about the A331, and it was James talking about the government have sat on things. Have we gone back to the government to ask what the criteria is for the monitoring? It seems to me that we should be pushing them for an answer, not hanging around waiting for them to contact us.
A few local authorities, that's us and Rushmore, we've been trying to get hold of DEFRA regarding this final monitoring program to confirm. But it was initially scheduled for June last year. Then due to internal restructuring and other delays, so we're essentially still waiting.
Thank you very
thanks.
much.
They sound like auditors.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Page. I have got one sort of question. It's a general, just a general question. And we've just spoke about A331, where we actually put the 50 mph limit for a short period. It's not a long length, it's a short length. And you suggested, James, that nitrogen level or whatever it is has gone up only marginally. Down, sorry, beg your pardon, down marginally. What I'm actually trying to find out is, what if we make Surrey Borough Council, where most of the cars actually travel, like around the schools, hospitals, and junctions, a 20 mph range, would it help the environment? I presume it would, but if that was the case, where do we go? Do we go to the county, or can we do it ourselves?
Yes, it would. Yeah, I will answer that. It would improve it, but not as much as you would think. We're already below the limit. I think if you were to introduce a 20-mile-per-hour limit, you'd have to prove that the measure was going to achieve compliance with the air quality objective. I think the two are linked together, and that would be a government thing or a county council thing to prove. So where we have compliance already, it will be difficult to get a reduction in speed. Maybe on safety grounds, yes, but on air quality, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much for that. At least we got an answer. Councillor Tapper.
Yes, just quickly on that subject. A 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is useless unless it's enforced. Are we guaranteed that we will actually have the funds put forward to the budget to monitor 20-mile-an-hour speed limits so as we can ensure that they are observed? If not, why are we bothering doing it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your observation. Any other questions? No. Moving on then. Sorry, Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, if I can come in on the matter that Councillor Tapper has just raised. If the speed limit isn't there, we definitely can't enforce it. If the speed limit is there, it does imply to responsible motorists that there is a reason why they should be driving more cautiously and sensibly. So one gives us some hope, the other gives us no hope. So it seems to be a very flippant comment.
Thank you. Noted, I would say. And if there are no more questions, I'm going to move on to agenda item 6, draft annual plan. Sarah, yeah? Sally. So, I don't know whether the committee members have met Sally Kipping. She is our new officer. So she is going to be presenting this report. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good evening, councillors. It's lovely to be here. This item is our draft annual plan for 2023-2024. Councillors will recall that back in October 2021, the 5-year strategy was published and we committed to publishing an annual plan. This is the draft plan, as I say, and we've brought it forward this year to align with the budget for the first time. Best practice would indicate that the plan and the budget should sort of go hand in hand, really. And it's essential that it has the correct scrutiny and governance to go through and that it does reflect the priorities you feel should be delivered for the council over the next year. I'm not going to go through the plan in tremendous detail, but you will see that it's broken down into the sections originally set by the 5-year strategy. And I would invite the committee to comment on it, give feedback on it, and let us know whether it does indeed reflect the priorities for the results that you would like delivered over the coming year. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Sally. Any questions, comments for Sally to take away today? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Very brief welcome, Sally. Lovely to have you here. It's just, I suppose, the joining up across different areas to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to support the objectives that are outlined. So a good example of that is where in our own green spaces and parking, we're looking to plant hedgerows to encourage biodiversity, etc. But in our planning policies, that isn't expressly called out in many cases. So I just think it's how we move this one step further to make sure that the policies really do underpin the strategic objectives wherever we can. That is a very quick and easy example to bring.
Extremely valid point you make there. If Sally could actually make a note of that and then try and see whether you can actually reply back. But when you reply, do reply to the entire committee so that everybody's on the same page. Thank you. Any other comments? Sorry, Councillor Bates. I've got Councillor Black here.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Okay, what is the appetite amongst members and officers to move from an approach where we monitor performance against single-point targets to an approach where we actually monitor performance, with the target being improvement, so we can focus on understanding capability and performance rather than how good a guess the target was? In other words, give me a couple of examples. I don't really care whether we achieve 10 CCTV deployments in 2023-24. What I care about is that we're deploying more, if it's effective. I don't care whether we recycle 63% of the waste. I care whether it's getting better or not.
Who wants to take that challenging question? Do you want to actually answer Councillor Black's point? Sorry, do you want to answer that, David?
I certainly want to respond positively, which is thank you very much for that question. And I think it's a really good challenge, not just for the officers, but for the committee. Performance indicators should be, and in fact, the agenda of the council should be about improvement wherever possible. Sometimes that improvement might actually be a standstill in an environment that's become more challenging. In other cases, it might be around delivering a statutory target that the government have set, and we need to comply with it. But in most cases, I think the appetite for improved performance should certainly be there. And I would welcome feedback of that type on specific indicators to look at how we could form them in a more effective way. So thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Councillor Wheeler, and then Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Having sat on this committee for quite a long time, in one form or another, the reason we went to specific items was because we had things before that were very woolly and very difficult to pull down. I think it goes without saying that we're not going to set an objective unless it either moves towards a definite improvement or constitutes a standstill point against a more challenging environment or a more challenging set of circumstances. Therefore, I would be very loath to see specifics removed, because actually we can monitor specifics. They're less woolly and they are less subjective. So I think it almost goes without saying that the objectives that we're setting are showing and are looking to drive improvement, but without the specific metrics, it's very difficult to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, can I quickly make a comment? I actually agree. I was going to summarize it at the end, but I agree with Councillor Wheeler. We got to have targets, and if we achieve the targets, then we improve the targets. So that's how we are going to improve our performance. If you don't have point of reference, it becomes extremely. It's not possible to measure.
I'm all for measurement. What I'm against or reticent about is arbitrary targets. What I'd like to see is how performance is moving against each of these measures, not whether we're hitting or not hitting an arbitrary target. Okay. That's my point. Thank you.
Councillor Black, I'm sure most of the targets which have been set by the council or the officers and the departments is not arbitrary. I'm sure they're based on something rather than sort of picking a figure from the past. I've been in the council only for 4 years. Councillor Hawkins has been here for a few decades. So has Councillor. Am I right, Councillor Hawkins? Or have I got it wrong?
You're not being ageist, are you, by any chance?
Absolutely not. I'm actually boosting your qualification here.
We do have the head of HR, you know, around. I mean, and long service is never a qualification for anything, I would point out. Right, can I come in now?
Yes,
Actually, we're going to be
do.
very quick because I really want to hear what Councillor Bates says on this, because he's one of the people I really do listen to on this sort of thing. You know, I'm pleased to see that we've gone away from the traditional RAG, which I think was just a disaster. My concern on this is when you look at some of these, just to pick up one, for example, it's number of referrals to social prescribing service, and the responsible officers, head of community services at Runnymede. Q2 results, 138 in red, target for 23-24, well, this year is 650, so we're way off that. But who is this written for? You know, is this for the public or is it for us? Because this to the public is either going to say we're doing a very poor job, or, you know, how are we going to address this? Where are we going to take this one forward? And, you know, the public are the ones that really count. And, you know, I just don't think this it's good, but is it really public friendly for want of another expression. I think really that's where I'm coming from, and welcome, Sally, but we have previously spoken, yes. Bit about face, but thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Actually, I was applauding your resilience of being a councillor. That's all I was doing with my earlier comment. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chair. There were 2 points I wanted to make in regard to this. Firstly, and this is not aimed at officers, this is actually aimed at all of you as politicians, and particularly those of you who are group leaders. This is all very interesting this year that is being proposed for the council, but of course, as you all know, there's going to be elections in May, and therefore what I would gently suggest to those of you who may be restanding is to actually look at this quite carefully with a view to, if there are areas in this plan that you do not agree with, it is probably a good idea over the next month or so to go into the Chief Executive's office and also officers written this report and quietly tell them. Because when you get to May or June, if you happen to be the ones who are in charge of the council, you may not want this plan. So this is a plan that officers are drawing up for you over the next year that you may be in agreement with or not in agreement with, and many of them I would imagine are not contentious. But I would strongly recommend that those of you who think you may be in leadership of the council going forward, it is sensible to advise officers privately, if need be, of areas that you dispute in this report, because that otherwise you're going to have a daft council next year going forward later this year. Officers doing one thing and politicians wanting something else. And I do want to plea in regard to one specific area that I think needs better wording than is currently in there, which is in relation to page 74. And this is a pet project, so I'm sure you'll understand, but it's in relation to fair trade. If you look at that, it's Econ 13, and the wording is take actions to promote fair trade following a council motion throughout the borough. In my view, that is far too vague. You will all remember, because we all voted all in agreement, that we had a motion on fair trade, which I looked up and took place on the 20th of April 2022. And the resolution of which was that we would submit our fair trade town application by the 31st of March this year. Now, that isn't going to be happening. And as you can see, we don't appear to be being very specific about what actions we do intend to take. So I would hope, and again, that will depend on the priority for the new council, that actually this is a motion which has gone through, and politicians are the ones who set the direction of the council. This is a motion that we all agree is important, and we haven't seen action on it yet. Now, there may be reasons for that, and there has been some private discussion, but we need to move this more forward, I think, than it has been so far. There hasn't been what I would describe as a massive rush of enthusiasm internally for working in this field, in my personal view. So I would gently leave both of those comments for you to kind of reflect upon for the coming year.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Tepper.
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in the items listed in ENV01, which is playground and green spaces.
Sorry, what page is?
That's on page 50.
Yeah, go for it.
There are 3 playground improvements listed here: Deanside Playground, Lightwater Fitness Trail, and the skate park at Crabtree. Can I ask at what stage these are? Are these just aspirations? Are they plans where actual plans of what's going to be done in place? Has the funding actually been allocated to carry out these? Thank you.
Who would like to take this? Mr. Stevens?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to take this. Yes, in terms of the aspiration, we are working through the funding at the moment. As you'll see, the Crabtree Park, or Crabtree Skate Park, does state it's subject to SIL funding. The rest, there are plans in place. We intend to progress and complete by December 23.
May I just add a follow-up to that then? Then there appears to be one missing from here, which is Bentley Copse, which appears to be in that stage. Funding and plans are in place, but no work has actually started. I would hope that that will be started way before December 2023. Otherwise, we're going to miss the possibility of having a brand new skate park this summer for the children to enjoy. And I would hope that would be the case with the other three as well. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor. Oh, sorry, Mr. Stevens? Yes? Noted. Thank you. Agenda item 7, corporate risk management strategy and corporate risk register. Mr. Watson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, councillors. What you have in front of you here is an update on the corporate risk management and our corporate risk register. It is good practice and indeed potentially a requirement of this committee that we report this at least annually, and this is a report to yourselves of where we are. In terms of risk management within the council, there is an officer risk management group that meets every 2 to 3 months to discuss the risk register and our risk strategy of where we go. That is a very high level group containing 2 strategic directors, the monitoring officer and the senior risk owners within the various services of the council. The register itself contains, and we don't make this a arbitrary target, but we'd like to be about the 10 main corporate risks that we hold across the council. Services will have their own risk registers, as will many senior projects or major projects the council runs. We'll also have a risk register around those things. And anything that comes out of those that seems to be a corporate risk, we will add into the risk register. But occasionally we will drop something out if we consider it's not as vital or as current as it was when we first put it in. We also add in, on occasion, temporary risks. And you'll see risk number 11 in the risk register is one around voter ID, which we feel is a risk both reputationally and possibly financially to the council with the current elections coming up and the requirement for voters to show an ID or a form of ID that is recognised by the government and we can take as acceptable ID for people. This is a new initiative coming through and we do believe there is a risk around voters turning up and being unable to vote at that point in time without the correct ID. So it's on the register for that very reason. That will probably drop off after we have had the elections and it's either materialised or not materialised, as the case may be. What you see on the risk register is mitigated scores based on the likelihood and the impact of the risk on the assumption that we do the mitigation that we state we're doing, and obviously we monitor against that mitigation to make sure we are mitigating the risks and managing out the likelihood and the impact of it. Impact is measured both in financial terms to the council and also in reputational terms. So a risk may not have a huge financial cost, but could impact on the council's reputation quite dramatically. So that will go in to the risk register at that point in time. Also presented tonight is our risk strategy, which is set at a very high level, with the intention to raise the profile of risk management within the council, both for councillors and for the officers who deal with risk on a daily basis. But it doesn't contain the procedures and policies we follow, which we will then develop further once we've got the strategy accepted and agreed. At that point in time, we will then work on more risk procedures to make the council what I would hope to be almost being risk natural, in that we consider risk in everything we do. I'm happy to take questions.
Questions? Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Deitch.
Thank you. Sorry, you kind of highlighted the one risk that I think we can do an awful lot more, and actually the mitigation doesn't go a full way towards mitigating. I have written to the Chief Executive on this separately, because in fact there is a policy whereby we have to be able to issue emergency passes and ID for voters that have applied for the voting, I can't remember what it's called, but you can apply basically to have ID that allows you to vote if you don't have a passport, driving license, etc. And we have to be able to do a short-term, last-minute issuing of those passes, and we have to have a plan in place for that. And there's nothing here about managing that risk with staffing, which we're going to need to plan for. So I'm sorry that you chose that one to discuss, but actually that therefore leads to other considerations. And one of those is you say that individual departments have their own RAID logs, presumably, for each of the corporate objectives, I would assume. And actually, I would expect that to feed into the overall corporate objective to give an overall score, rather than just looking at these very high-level strategic objectives, so that it is truly a risks log that reflects all of the corporate objectives of the council, that is informed by the sub-project plans and risks and issues logs that sit below it. I won't mention anything about ISO accreditation or anything that would lead to this, because I'm not going there again. But I would expect to see that informing this as opposed to it being independent of it. Thank you.
Mr. Watson, do you want to answer that?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Wheeler. Yes, this is, as I said at the start, the high-level corporate risk register, and therefore the people who come along to the risk management group are there to raise it and bring items into this register from their own service registers or where they consider risks to be. This is the risk management group that identifies it, but is down to the actual services to manage their risks within the mitigation strategies. So again, with the item on voter ID, there are certainly plans in place. They're not completely in this here because at the time this was raised in there, the process has moved on. And the idea of this register is to highlight to the senior managers of the council and to councillors where the risks are at a high level, but the actual action taken to address those risks is done at an operational and service level.
Councillor Deitch.
Thank you. I think I pressed the right button this time. I actually wrote to the Chief Executive and I thought that the measures you've taken so far in respect of this voter ID thing, I think have been very good. I would add, though, that we can always do more. And I think you're right to have this on the risk registers. Reputationally, it's the whole essence of this council, the democratic process. So I would suggest that perhaps on every single email where we have the ability, because you put it on that statement at the bottom, the privacy statement thing, every single email from every councillor, from every member of staff, from this whole council, that there is a footer put on the bottom of that. Every piece of post that we put out. And I would even suggest, and I know I'll get the comments, well, not everybody's on social media, but if we have got budget and we can afford just to do a little bit of Facebook sponsorship, boosted posts on this, so that when a resident says, have you done absolutely everything you possibly can to keep us informed, we can say with all confidence, yes, that's what we've done. I will personally be putting stuff out on my social media. I think it's in all our interests to make sure that everybody's aware of this. I'll be doing it on my email list every opportunity I get. So I hope this council would also take every opportunity to. Thank you very much.
Councillor, CEO want to.
Councillor Deitch and Councillor Wheeler, I'm really grateful for your support on this issue. It is a very significant challenge nationally, and it's a very significant challenge for us. Just to reassure you that the actions that you've all mentioned, every one of them is in our plan. Yes, but welcome any other ideas as the plan starts to roll out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Unlike the previous two colleagues, I haven't written to the Chief Executive. I just thought I'd make that point. A leaflet in the council tax, a separate leaflet in with the council tax bills is the obvious one. Yeah, I totally agree with Paul on the having the footer on all my emails, but it has to be changed. Otherwise, people won't read it. We know perfect. And look, at the end of the day, you're not going to get everybody. We know that, so it has to be dealt with at the time. But have it refreshed, and then, yes, send out to the councillors a link so that we can do that. So there is a certain continuity. One of the problems of each doing their own thing, we don't always seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet, and this is an important one, and it's sensible if we are, but keep it refreshed, because you'll read, oh yeah, but you won't read it. I spent many years trying in information. I have a master's in marketing, and I know perfectly well, people will just blink and miss it. But yeah, I certainly the council tax and Paul's suggestion. Thank you.
Chairman, just very quickly to come back. Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. You're absolutely right. Part of our communications plan, and I was nervous about this part because sometimes it could be misunderstood, is moving the messages around. So, for example, the website's a key location, but not having it in the same location from here until May, but turning it off, moving it to second place, then back to first place, and the same with the sign-off, so that we can take a coordinated approach. In terms of council tax bills, we have got a reference to it in the council tax leaflet that's going to every household with the council tax bills, and we're also making reference to it on the front page of the next edition of Heath Scene, and we've got a double-page spread in Heath Scene as well on this topic. And we're using all the other channels that are available as well.
I think we've spoken enough about it. I think the council is very clearly doing its best. So let's try and do it. Councillor Noble, if it's very quick, please.
It is very quick. Thank you for this presentation, Mr. Watson. I would just like to ask, could we have the column headings on every page on the spreadsheet, please, just to make it a bit easier to read? Thank you. And secondly, in terms of the communications to residents about voter ID, my 90-year-old mother isn't on Facebook, doesn't look at social media, doesn't look at a website. She doesn't look at the council tax bill because my father looks at that. So we need to make sure that we're reaching those people.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as per usual, the chair is going to ask the last question of Mr. Watson. I say, Mr. Watson, that most of your risk, revised rating, the maximum you have worked it out to be 6. Of course, you can go up to 8, I believe, or not 8, 16, but let's assume we go up to 8, which is actually severe, significant reputational damage. Surely to God, if you are bust, we are gone. That must be a severe reputational damage. Shouldn't we actually consider putting that somewhere to say this is all red alarms or big alarms?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, what I must point out is that the scoring on the matrix on page 90 is the post-mitigation score. And I would not really expect to see something after mitigation to still be sitting in the red. The reason being, if it still is, why are we mitigating it? We may as well just accept it's going to happen. For those that have done risk management, there's normally what they call the 4 T's of managing risk. One of them is tolerate, which basically means you don't do anything, you accept that risk might happen. We don't tend to go for tolerate where we can. We will go for treat or transfer where we can, which allows us to bring those ratings down in the matrix post-mitigation. That, of course, does mean, as a council and as officers, we have to ensure that mitigation happens to manage out as much of that risk as possible.
Mr. Watson, thank you very much for that answer. Right, if there's none on this one, let's move on to next agenda item, which I believe is the budget setting 23-24. Councillor Perry, it's your show.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. We're right in the middle of budgeting now for the coming financial year and the years that follow, which form part of the medium-term financial strategy for the borough. In your pack there, you've got full details of their draft details at the moment of all the revenue and capital budgets that form part of that overall picture. Not intending tonight to go through every individual page, although we can answer any individual questions that you may have. The purpose tonight is to provide the committee with the opportunity to make comments and suggestions before it goes before the executive on the 14th of February and the council on the 22nd of February. Yeah. The main issue we've had, obviously, as a borough this year is the sudden jump that we've experienced in inflation. It's gone over 10%, whilst on the income side, council tax by government has been limited to an increase of 3%. So there's obviously a gap there that we've got to level off as we go on for the next 2 years. Okay, for example, this coming year, the net cost of our services is estimated at 17.4 million, whilst our normal funding stream will only bring in 13.66 million. There's a gap there. So that gap has had to be bridged by using two sources within our reserves for this 1 year. We've brought forward 2 million from the interest equalisation reserve, which is thanks to the prudence of previous groups when we were paying an amount of interest which was below that originally forecast. The difference was put into a reserve to cover events like that we've experienced at the moment, where it's gone the other way. Interest rates have peaked, so we've had that reserve to smooth out the spikes. And that's what's happened this year. And as we go on, obviously, we hope the gap will close and we'll have to be less reliant. But it looks as though the next at least 2 or 3 years, we're going to have to use reserves to balance the account. So that's where we are on that. So full details are provided in the report. There's many, many pages there. So any suggestions or comments that you've got, please make them, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
The silence is deafening.
Stunned into silence.
Sorry, Councillor Bates.
Thank you. I think I just have one question at this time, which is in relation to the Star Chamber efficiencies. And but based on the Star Chamber that took place during or last year, or i.e. this financial year, it's been proposed or identified that £482.5 thousand would be the actual efficiencies for this year. I'm looking at page, let me just have a look on my screen, 18 of the kind of report that's before you. But looking ahead for this year, obviously the proposal is to have a further Star Chamber and a target efficiency of 500,000 for this coming year. And so my question is therefore, is that 500 over and above the 482, which is already identified? Or so in effect, are we looking at saving a further 17,500 above that, which we've already identified? Or are we looking at a further 500 over and above that, which we'd already seen for this year?
Councillor Perry or Mr. Watson? Mr. Watson?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bates. The simple answer is that £500,000 is in addition to the money already identified. The money identified in the Star Chamber that happened in 2022 will now be built into the base budgets as an adjustment. So we're looking for an extra £500,000. It is a large number. I believe that it's still available to get that sort of money out through efficiencies. It's, I suppose, an experience I learned over the last year that when I try and seek efficiencies from services during budget setting, it's very hard. And to have the standalone process partway through the year that focuses purely on efficiencies, savings and extra income generation is a more effective way of actually driving those benefits through the council's budgets. So it will be a hard task. It may be certainly harder than it was last year. To use a famous cliche, we've got the low-hanging fruit. We're now going to start bending some branches to reach further. And hopefully, but we won't break the tree.
Councillor Bates, sorry.
Yeah, just add to what Mr. Watts has just said there. We're talking about efficiencies here. It doesn't just mean cutting costs. It means also extra income generation, which Bob mentioned by way of passing there. And we have lots of opportunities, we believe, to increase our income by the provision of services and what have you. And that makes that target much more achievable than just cost cutting.
Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Chair. I think you called me back in. I did guess that that was probably going to be the answer with regards to 500,000. But I see a big issue. And the big issue here is not actually an officer issue. Again, it's a political one. Because as I've mentioned earlier, and everyone is well aware, you will be standing for election in May. And you're going to be coming before your electorate saying £500,000 of savings need to be made, but you're not going to be telling them where it's coming from. So, you know, I don't think that's right. I think that's completely wrong. It doesn't matter which party it is. You know, we can't sit here and go to have an election and say, well, we've got a £500,000 gap, but we've no idea at the moment as to what we're going to be doing about it. We've got some vague ideas about income, vague ideas about expenditure, but we're not going to tell you, and you're going to vote on it anyway. You know, I just think that is completely wrong. So I hope that, again, those who are going to be here reflect upon that and think about at least putting forward some ideas in terms of what that's going to be, because I will personally really struggle to support a council tax budget which has got a £500,000 gap in it. So you've got a few weeks to come up with some ideas, as indeed have others. But I just think we can't, that is just not right or reasonable in my view. So, yeah, I just want to put a marker in the sand now.
Councillor Bates, thank you very much. Mr. Watson or Mr. Perry? Councillor Perry, take your pick.
Thank you, Chair. By law, we have to publish a budget before the election. It's got to be in by law in February. So we have to come up with a budget. We've got to show how we're balancing it. And this is how we think we're going to balance it. So Mr. Bates, Councillor Bates may not like it, but that's the way it is.
Mr. Watson, would you like to add something to this? Yeah, because you could be the person doing the numbers.
Yes, indeed, and thank you again, Councillor Bates. You do raise a valid point on it. The issue, of course, is that we do need to identify the savings. It would be wonderful if we didn't have to, but what will happen is that we would give the new administration the chance, whoever the new administration may be, to do the budget decisions around that. What I can say is that when we looked at setting the budget last year, the predicted drawdown on the general fund balance was about £2.25 million. Because of that £500 in there, we've actually reduced it to about 1.8 million. So there is capacity within the reserves and the general fund balance if we were not to make that £500,000 target. But not to have a target for me would not be the best way of doing it. We need to generate base budget savings at some point going forward to help reduce the deficit permanently and stop the reliance on the reserve balances being drawn down. But we have sufficient reserves to do it, and we have sufficient reserves to cover us on that £500,000 should the case arise. But I feel that there is still opportunities there. As part of the process we did last year on the Star Chamber, we actually identified potential or possible savings over and above the targets that we actually took. So the first thing we'll probably do with the administration when we start the Star Chamber process is look at some of those and see what other ones we can bring forward and see where we go.
Thank you for that, both of you. Any other questions? None whatsoever. Anything from me? Yes. No, I think I'll give it a skip this time around. I'll wait for the right time. Thank you very much for the offer. Excellent. I thought that would take hours. Agenda item 8 done in minutes. Yes, now we move on to public REM task and finish group, final report, 150 page, 150 to 124. Mr. Watson, I believe you're presenting this.
Thank you again, Chair. Yes, this is the report, or my report, that I produced for the Task and Finish group and was presented to them, I think it's 2 weeks ago now. We had the meeting to confirm what was on there. And part of this group came through with various recommendations that came out from it. I won't go through the whole report. It has been reviewed by the group, and the group accepted it as being a final, I hope, report on the area. It does build on the work done by the monitoring officer and the chief accountant previously, and I suppose what we're looking for here is what the committee would like us to do with this going forward with regard to the recommendations that we put in, or that I put in the report, and the group agreed were sound recommendations. I don't know if you want to add anything, Chair, yes, as the chair of the group as well.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. I must first thank you for all the hard work you have been doing, which is very, very well appreciated by the group itself, which is Councillor White and Councillor Galliford and myself. And we have gone through it. And unfortunately, one thing I must add at this point in time is this is a task and finish group which have gone through a proper process, thanks to people like Councillor Bates and Councillor Wheeler, who has been actually saying, go back, go back, go back. So we have actually got it right. So a future task and finish group, investigations or work, this is the right process to do, where the task and finish group actually meets with the final report and actually accepts or amends the recommendations, which now the three of us have accepted and recommended to the committee. So having said all this, hopefully everyone has actually read the report. And if you have any questions, please ask either, please ask Mr. Watson, who did the report. Thank you. Councillor Wheeler, sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Bates.
Is it me first? Because I think Councillor Hawkins had his hand up as well.
It is you. You're here.
Okay. I think one of the main reasons for wanting this review was the fact that a large sum of money was approved without it going through any additional scrutiny. Reading through the recommendations, that doesn't seem to be in there, that actually that there seems to be no recognition, unless I've not read it properly, of the fact that those funds were spent without the correct reference back in the right way. I just wondered if that could be picked up on, please.
Thank you again, Councillor Wheeler. The reason why we haven't put in about the process to follow when requesting additional money for projects is because that is contained within the council's constitution under its financial regulations, and therefore there's no point making a recommendation of something that should be done anyway. Now, we could go back many, many times and investigate whether people did or did not follow it. Unfortunately, I do not have the corporate memory, but going forward, my job as the council's Section 151 officer is to ensure that our financial regulations are followed. So I will reiterate to people that this should be read in conjunction with our financial regulations and the Constitution, but it doesn't, in my view, need to be clear in here as an additional recommendation for an improvement of process when the process is already in there.
Councillor Bates.
Thank you. I think some of us do have that corporate memory, and we can say that it wasn't. And we can be quite categorically clear about that. Now, in terms of the people who may have been doing that, I'm not aware any of them are still residing in the council. So I do accept that it's difficult, therefore, to take any further action in respect of that. What I would make is a couple of comments. Firstly, I do agree that now is the time to draw this matter to a close. So I don't think it's not fair to let new councillors be asked to look into this any further. So I do think it's right that we draw this finally. I would observe it's taken 2 years from the original executive report that went forward. I think that is disappointing for whatever reason. And I would hope that in the event of any further matters of this nature coming forward, that they could be resolved in a quicker way. And I'm not putting blame on anybody about that. I just think this has taken a long time. And the whole point, as we've just heard, is in regard to decisions and finances being committed by this council without authority. And that point did happen. And it's only really referred in part in this. So a number of recommendations are quite interesting, I have to say. Were not things I'd initially thought of, and at no stage did I personally think there were issues in relation to much of this. But that has always been the concern that I had, that others had. And so the three recommendations to me that I particularly want to highlight are recommendations 8, 9, and 10. I think even if everything else I'm not saying the others are unimportant, but these are the absolutely key ones, in my view, in relation to councillors and scrutiny. We can't have a situation when councillors are kept in the dark or being, in effect, forced to vote for something with no choice. That is wrong, and that should never have happened, and it did happen in this case. And I hope that never happens again. Councillors always have the choice. It may be that those choices are limited in regard to legal advice being received and the rest of it, but nonetheless, the decision should not be made in advance and then retrospectively agreed. It should always be within the financial regulations that have rightly been identified there, that councillors are the ones doing that. Recommendation 9 is important in terms of the audit matter of this council as well, because they should have been informed. And we need to make sure that they're adequately resourced in the event of issues of this nature. I do accept it's only a small team, but nonetheless, we do need to make sure that this sort of thing, which by the way, I believe was done in good faith. I don't believe there was any kind of wider personal gain by anybody, but we can kind of clamp down on this in future. The final area, to me, is astonishing in regard to the fact that we were deleting messages and we can't access information of emails and things like that. Now that raises massive issues to me. I'm pleased to say it's being addressed, so that's good. But it raises massive issues as to how on earth we were complying with our regulations under freedom of information. You know, if all these mailboxes were disappearing and being deleted, I mean that smells, if I'm honest with you, as to how that may have happened. Again, that may have been the policy at the time, but we can't have that. I mean, that is just awful. I mean, just imagine if that was happening in any kind of government or public service, that kind of thing was going on, particularly in regard to decisions of financial nature. Many of you know I'm involved in managing a charity. I have to keep every financial record in relation to 6 years, and emails and decisions which are absolutely relevant for audit purposes and external things have to be kept for certain periods of time. So I don't know how that happened, but I'm pleased to see that that's not going to happen now. And so those three in particular, I hope we do learn from. I think this has been a learning lesson for everybody, and I hope the council will move forward as a result.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, item 10, it's stunning. I'm not going to sort of go completely overboard. It's now been fixed. I mean, I find it bizarre. I think it's naivety more than anything else. My concern, I'm looking at this from a professional point of view, is that I said the other night at a meeting, I thought we now had a very high quality team of officers across the board. And I think this project, the officers were under pressure. There were too few officers doing too much. I think that is one of the reasons. And I think maybe the officers, I don't know, they just felt that they had to crack on rather than put their hand up and say, help. matter of leadership, we won't go into that, but I think there could be a high element of weak leadership or leadership of by different methods. We do need to have proper project management, which did not exist, and it is one of the recommendations in here. And I like, 6. Yes, you've got to have a team leader, but you need a project board. These are quite frankly standard for anybody dealing with any construction issues. It would be wonderful if we could get under the pavements and find out what the hell's in there in the first place. And I do remember the works outside Fenway Park Hospital. I think before your time, yeah. Right, there was one further back where they were widening the pavement, and somebody put a spade through a high voltage cable that nobody knew was there, along with recent investigations. So we don't always know, and I think there was a case on the London Road for an occupier down on one of the industrial estates, a major computer centre. That was brought down.
SO and the water pipe. SO and the water pipe in Lightwater.
Yeah, well, it was Lightwater. Yeah, but I mean, you get my drift, that we do need to have these proper things. It's unavoidable, but we've got to have it properly monitored, and if there is an issue, the red flags have got to be hoisted sooner, and people have got to be empowered to cry for help. That is the empowerment of the team, and that is the key message that should be carried out for this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. If there are no other comments or questions, I'd like to bring this to a close by thanking Mr. Watson for pulling the whole report together. I know it's taken 2 years, written by 2 different officers. At least it's come together. And listening to the committee members and the task and finish group members, doing the necessary changes where appropriate. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Watson. We are on.
Should we not be voting or formally making this recommendation for the changes implemented to go back to the executive?
I'm happy to do that. Any member who is against this report being filed and noted? Anyone? So this is a unanimous acceptance. This report is accepted. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Valerie. There's a summary, purpose, and recommendations. Are we going to accept the recommendations? Yes? Thank you.
Can we have a fourth one? The task and finish groups have a set end date before we drift into...
I would actually challenge you on that, because this was nothing to do with the task and finish groups. It was to do with all kinds of other issues involved, which we actually had to manage, including certain other issues, which I'm not going to talk about today. I can assure you. Are you happy?
Yeah, I am happy. I just think that we know that there are residents that watch this either live or not not live, and some of those would have the expectation that we're reading out the recommendations in order to confirm that we agree with them, because they're not going to have the benefit of the papers necessarily.
I shall read it out for your benefit.
That's all. I mean, it's not just on this one. I think maybe we've moved too far on this meeting. It's just something to be noted for future meetings, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Do we accept this recommendation? Yes or no? Yes. Thank you very much. Moving on. Item 10, committee work program. I mean, it's committee work program is for the next, to be honest, it's for the next PNF meeting, which is in March, and then the rest is for the next council. Any new items to be added for the March one? That's all I'm interested in. Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I do feel as though I've been somewhat argumentative this evening, and I apologise to everyone for that. It's most unlike me.
Really? kidding.
No,
You're
there is
kidding me.
no proposal
Yeah, we need
whatsoever.
a
There's
vote.
never normally, I feel, any reason to be. Please don't think, I hope I'm not being difficult. Actually, I would like to say, to moving it forward, given that we had a resolution earlier, that we should bring back ahead of a year the agenda item that was being discussed. Could we please add that to September provisionally, obviously subject to the future members of the council coming in and agreeing with it, but that would bring us back to the 6-month point, and it would seem to me sensible to bring it forward for that meeting. In fact, July, where are we? We're only in January. It'll be the July meeting. So if we could possibly bring it back there, I think that would be very helpful.
Democratic services, can we fit all that in? Yeah. Environmental, but consider. Could we do that, Catherine Simpson? You would look at, can I leave that with the officers to think about it and make sure that that's a recommendation that's coming from the committee? We ought to actually add it in and change the order of play. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just confirm, you mean the environment portfolio holder update?
Where we haven't been performing well, where we've had the assurance that we are now fully staffed and that matters will be dealt with.
Yep.
And I don't, with all due respect, I don't think it's for officers to need to make that decision.
No, that's what I've said.
I would like to, given that we made that recommendation,
let me stop you there, please. That's what I actually told the officer, can we bring it in by adjusting something else? Thank you very much for that, Councillor Wheeler. I don't want to dwell on this. I mean, I know you'd like to make a point, but let's make the point. And I've accepted your point, and I've actually requested the Democratic Services to make that amendment and to change it around. Thank you very much. No more.